Hey, and we are the Coalition, loud and proud, civilly disobedient media. We are broadcasting right next to your district courthouse here on the sunny climes, the sunny streets of Providence, Rhode Island. A loft hotel to our left, and a dramatic moment here. Vindication, that's the word of the day. I'm going to apologize in advance because I probably, being the old Irish soul I've become, I may actually get emotional in this. This is a glorious, yet I'm going to say emotional moment. And I'm just someone who has been an observer, a close observer, and I've gotten to know the people involved in this trilogy, if you will, this almost biblical passage of time. So it's going to be difficult for me to separate the emotion from the import of the event, not just on a political level, on a personal level, on a cultural level, on a Rhode Island level, because this ultimately speaks to the challenges that so many Rhode Islanders faced during the pandemic. I am here, and I'm sure you recognize him by now, a frequent offender on the Coalition Radio Network, super lawyer, and there's two times, I've always believed this since I met him, but there are two times in my life, once on a very personal level, and now today, where I don't think super lawyer really fits the bill. Today is transcendent. And again, a victory for so many people who suffered. Attorney Greg Picciarelli. Greg, I'm going to get emotional, and I think you might too. What happened?
So, well, first of all, Pat, thank you for having me. You were the first one. You were at the first hearing, the very first night that these young women were terminated from their employment, and you've been following this case very diligently, attended all court hearings, and my clients really appreciate all that you've done to cover this. We have a settlement.
Let's first of all talk about the backdrop. I mentioned in the run-up on the slate that this is the Barrington 3.
Right.
Let's talk briefly about, and I lovingly, that's a term of affection, because I really wanted to, when we came up with that term that first night, it was really speaks to the civil libertarian nature, in addition to the human nature, of a very personal protest that took place at great expense by 3 dedicated Barrington teachers. So let's just lead off and say what happened.
So the 3 teachers, Brittany, Stephanie, and Carrie, young women with families, young children, married, very devout religious ladies, very fine people, excellent teachers, never been a doubt or any question about their professional competence. Barrington School Department decided in August of 21 that they wanted to mandate vaccinations for all school staff. These young ladies had a religious objection to that, and they were fired because of it. But despite my repeated pleas to the committee that what they were doing was illegal and not appropriate in any way. We ended up dragging this out for the last 20 months with just some very bitter litigation. My clients went through just some really very traumatic times. They had lost their jobs. They were primary breadwinners, and they had health. They were the ones providing health care for their families, and they were left to fend for themselves, basically. Even the union refused to represent them, their teachers' union.
Let me jump in for a second on 2 things. I come from a union family. My late father was a union man. Bred into us from the earliest age was the notion that union members are a family. Sometimes a dysfunctional family, sometimes people act out. In this situation, you're talking about 3 teachers who essentially careers had just been destroyed. And a wise man said to me that night in shock that he had seen unions come to the defense of virtually every aspect of criminology imaginable, yes, of some of the most extreme types. The 3 young women in question had merely observed their religious beliefs. And for anyone who would doubt that, understand that these three women took their religiosity so seriously that they stared into the abyss. And short of physical threat, the financial destruction that this levied upon them is the ultimate, and we're going to use the word a lot today, vindication of their strength, of their religious beliefs. They were willing to walk away from everything that they knew, everything that they'd had faith in, every institution that was part of their life, all right, in order to maintain what they thought was their right, the connection between them and their God. I don't know, again, short of physical issues being inflicted on people, I don't know in today's America, I've seen a group of people take that so seriously on such a primal level. What would you say about that?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think it's that faith that they've had over these last few months, their faith, their family's faith that's been keeping them going. They've shown amazing resilience to stick by their faith. And some people, a lot of other people with similar situations have gone through this, and hopefully this, what we've finally been able to resolve will serve as a kind of an example of how others should be vindicated the same way, for sticking up for what they believe in.
If we could do a little deep dive into like a very basic treatment and there'll be going to be plenty of time and plenty of discussions about this going forward, because not only is it a vindication, it's a celebration, it's an example. These young women should stand out as people of faith who were willing to do whatever they could to maintain their observance of that faith. So they were, let's go through the timeline a bit. They were at some point notified by Barrington that they had to vaccinated for
COVID.
For COVID, yeah. And again, I apologize. What then happened? Lead us through a little bit.
So initially they were told back in September of 21 that Barrington was going to have a vaccine policy for all staff. The only school district in the state that had that. Mm-hmm. And that if you didn't get vaccinated, you were subject to termination. The policy itself had a provision that said that subject to an exemptions in state or federal law, which my clients and I think a lot of others assumed to mean if you had a religious discrimination or reason for not taking it, that would be observed. Mm-hmm. In fact, one of my clients actually met with the superintendent in which he told her that. And then something happened in October. It was some secret meeting that the committee had in the middle of October of 21, and they changed their mind. And they decided that they weren't going to grant any exemptions. And they gave my clients basically a week and a half notice that they were going to have a hearing at which they were just basically going to be terminated. They weren't going to give them any real defense. As you said, the union, my clients asked the union for support and representation, and the union basically told them, too bad. You had two choices, get the vaccine or resign. So that's what led to this litigation that we fought on many levels. We filed an open meetings law complaint. We were partially successful in that. The judge did find that they had violated the open meetings law and that the policy was passed incorrectly, but the judge wouldn't go so far as to order their reinstatement. So we still had other avenues of the appeals of the termination, of discrimination claims. And as it was coming to a head, we were going to have a hearing next month, I should say. The committee fired their then law firm, Sarah Rapport, and hired new legal counsel. And immediately that new legal counsel reached out to us, and within 2 weeks we were able to get a settlement.
Now, let's step back again in time a little bit. You know, folks often talk, it's almost cliche, about Damocles' sword. Going into the Christmas holidays, we were approaching, if you will, the deadline, the literal drop-dead date for their termination. The termination was scheduled to happen at a certain day. Some of the more not-so-amusing anecdotes. At one point, there was supposed to be a formal hearing. Now, let's put each other in the frame of mind, attempt to, of these three women, all right, who, again, and if you're not a teacher, if you haven't been married to a teacher, you don't have a family member as a teacher, I don't know. It's sort of like nursing. It's not a career. It's not a job. It's an avocation. It's a calling. So they're facing potentially the end of their careers, because if you get fired mid-year, school boards and hiring agents, first of all, you're past the point where you can legitimately get hired, and it's a gigantic flag. There was supposed to be a hearing, I believe it was a week or so run-up in December, with the drop-dead date to be January. That was postponed, and I'll speak to this for a second because I'll bear personal witness to this. In one of the more interesting nights of my life, we were trying to figure out, as a reporting agency, why it got postponed. And the first excuse was that it was postponed because of a school threat, which, by the way, we take very seriously here, a school threat at another school, at the high school. Now, understand, teachers' meetings are held at the Barrington Middle School. So this was days after a threat that was largely discredited. And so that couldn't be the reason. And then the word was out that one of the attorneys involved had back issues. That was the reason. I was given a tip, and that's how this works in the real reporting world, that the real reason was that the then chair of the Barrington School Committee our child was supposed to be in the Christmas concert at Barrington. I'm not going to ask you to speak to this because this is my own skullduggery. So yes, I took the high road, and yes, I staked out the Christmas concert at the Barrington High School. I was amazed by the snow machine. It was quite the performance. The jazz band was on point. And yes, I met Ms. Gina Bay in the crowd as she was leaving. And I have this on video, which I'll be happy to share again. It's in one of my greatest hits. And she refused to acknowledge. And the question was, what's more important? We understand your child's concert. But the literal professional lives of 3 women was swinging in the balance. And because of that, this went over the Christmas holidays, didn't it?
That was one of many delays that we suffered throughout the course of the last 20 months. There was the litigation tactics of the prior law firm was just slash and burn. They thought they could intimidate me, intimidate my clients, overwhelm us with just outrageous filings. None of it worked. Again, vindication.
We move forward now. They've officially been terminated into the spring. And we're still in court. We're still having hearings. Again, my takeaway will always be the first night we met. You know, when I watched the union lawyer give a perfunctory, insisted a seat at the table. And so if you were a casual observer like myself at that time, you thought, okay, maybe the cavalry's here. Maybe they kind of had a little come to Jesus moment, as we like to say. And they decided that they were going to do the right thing. She was there for a matter of minutes, made a speech, most of which related to her participation as a union member in the process, and then walked away, literally, please correct me if I'm wrong, never ever to be seen ever again in any of the proceedings.
Other than as a defendant.
Right.
Because we even though we've settled with the committee, we haven't settled with the union, and we'll be proceeding against them for what they did.
Okay. So this goes throughout the spring. Another poignant moment that maybe you could speak to, you talked about the slash and burn tactics. These 3 women who lost their jobs, again, because of their religious beliefs, obviously very serious, were called up and questioned about their status in life, if you will, to that moment. All right? Their status in life. And the thought almost was that it was still, everything was okay now. Somehow they'd moved on in life. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, I mean, at one point during these hearings, some of the proceedings, there was this perception that they should just get over it and move on. I don't know why anybody would think that would be the case. At least my clients certainly didn't feel that way. We weren't going anywhere. We're gonna keep fighting this until we got not just a fair settlement or resolution, but a just settlement or resolution.
One of the ironies here is that when the Barrington School Committee took a vote, there was a last-minute change of heart. The individual who had that last-minute change of heart was survived what was a tumultuous election process for the school committee and is now chairing that committee.
Correct.
Speak to the courage of his decision to make a change like that in the face of that adversity, and what bearing that had on the current school committee.
Yeah, I can't speculate as to what any individual committee members' feelings are or decision-making process. Maybe someday somebody can ask him directly. I'd rather he say it. I'm not going to speculate on it.
I will. I'll ask you. The results. Tell us.
All right, the meat of it, right?
Yeah.
So, the settlement, the important part of the settlement is this. They've been offered reinstatement and full back pay and benefits. What we call in labor law being made whole, as if they had never been fired. All of their seniority, everything that they get back as part of their reinstatement. They also we have agreed to $100,000 of punitive damages above and beyond what they were out of pocket.
To be shared by the defendant?
To be shared by the three
plaintiffs.
And a significant payment in attorney's fees, which, look, I never took this case. I don't think I charged my clients any money ever on this case. I wasn't doing it for the money, but again, it's vindication. And so the total settlement is well over $500,000.
Wow.
And again, and the key part is they have their reinstatement. Their records are purged. They don't have to say that they were fired again if they apply for another job. They're just 100% vindication, more than I think we could have hoped for, even if we won in court. I think it was not just a fair settlement, a just settlement, and again, perhaps a guide. These aren't the only people who have suffered this, and hopefully this could be a guide to other people who've had their lives destroyed, and maybe for no good reason, and maybe can get some justice themselves.
I'm going to ask you to speak on their behalf in just one element. Their connection to students. Because we've talked about the religious issue here. But when you talk about destroying lives and careers, my personal opinion, and full disclosure, I'm married to a 40-year veteran teacher, right, is that after having gotten to know them and talked to them, it's fairly trying moments, that I can't imagine the three of them being anything other than the kind of teachers that you dream that your child will get. What's your thoughts on that? Their connection with kids of all types, and
again, these were spectacular teachers. Kerry was a music teacher in the district for many years, a number of awards. Still has former students keep contact with her. Just staggering that she, at the beginning of the year, midway through the first quarter, she just dragged away from her students for no good reason.
Right.
Stephanie and Carrie, both special ed teachers, highly qualified. Brittany has ESL, second language certifications. Stephanie's a reading specialist who's in high demand in the state. I mean,
right.
What she does is amazing work. They both have master's degrees. I mean, these are just so immensely qualified teachers. And the reason ostensibly that this vaccine policy was created was supposedly to keep children safe. Well, that just never made any sense. First of all of these teachers had already gotten COVID. They had natural immunity. It's taken this long for the federal government to finally admit, by the way, the first 2 doses of the vaccine that they wanted these teachers to take and everybody else to take are now illegal. The federal government has made the first 2 doses illegal. They've removed the EUA authorization for them. The federal government admitted the vaccine didn't stop transmission. My clients they actually told the committee that there were teachers who had COVID, who also had the vaccine, who got COVID again, and were still going out sick more than my clients were. What was the purpose of all this? At one point, Gina Bay, the chair, testified at a court hearing under oath that the reason they did this policy was they wanted to be the leaders, like the vanguard, and the other committees were going to follow suit, and none of them ever did. I interpret that as this was pure wokeism. This was virtue signaling. This wasn't about public health. They wanted to be seen to be doing the right thing. It was all for show. And I think the last 20 months have clearly borne that out. Again, not just in this instance, but in many others. Remember, the Department of Health and the governor never mandated vaccines for teachers. If it was such a public health issue,
right,
why didn't the Department of Health do it? Mm-hmm. They mandated it for healthcare workers. They never mandated it for teachers. Why? What is the expertise that the Barrington School Committee had to mandate public health? The illogic of the whole thing was just staggering. And again, this will we hope this will show that this never happens again in Barrington or anywhere else like this.
There's a big picture conversation that we're going to have very soon about the power of government to arbitrarily inflict these mandates, and I use the word inflict intentionally, upon individuals who, in a world where we claim body autonomy, that conversation needs to be had. But for the moment, I just want to emphasize this. 3 dedicated teachers wrenched from their classrooms illegally, stunning talents in their various areas of expertise, were awarded full back pay, additional damages, monetary damages, a complete expungement of the issue from their personal records. Sorry. Vindication. Nothing less. Vindication. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat.